Good, okay, everybody please stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Okay. First up on the agenda is the appointment of police officers to the Irvington Police Department. Chief, do you want one at a time?
Sure, everyone.
Yeah, we can do one at a time. How about Brandon Bellis first? Hold on one second. Even though Larry told me this today, I have forgotten already. Okay. So I'm going to make a motion, resolve to appoint Brandon Bellis to the permanent position of police officer grade 4 at an annual salary of $82,354 effective June 3rd, 2025. Subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. Further resolved to appoint Daniel Graviano to the permanent position of police officer grade 2 at an annual salary of $91,736 effective June 3rd, 2025, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, come on. Okay, and then repeat after me. I, Brandon Bellis,
I, Brandon Bellis,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will affirm the Constitution of the United States
that I will affirm the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of, of a police officer
I will faithfully discharge the duties of a police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Daniel Graviano,
I, Daniel Gravian,
do solemnly swear
swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of a police officer
of a police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And congratulations, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out.
That's a big crowd.
Yep, big families, I guess, and friends. Okay, next up are announcements. First, there is a check over $25,000 payable to Pacific Trans Global Construction Corp. For Parks and Rec Superintendent Office renovation and mold removal. The amount was $47,997.46. Second, the Bulldog Art and Food Festival will be Sunday, June 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. on Main Street. Maybe you'll say something more later. Yes, okay. And fireworks will be July 4th, 2025 at Madison Park, rain date July 5th. Okay, next up is correspondence. This seems to have prompted this particular piece of correspondence, which is from Laura Regan, prompted no less than 20 responses already and still climbing. and I'm only counting because I've tried to respond to each one, at least to let people know we got it. Those letters that we received in response will make the next agenda, but I am going to touch a couple of them. I would only suggest, Lori's not here. Oh, I'm sorry, forgive me. I would only suggest that in the future, look, I understand you're trying to make the point. If I parse through this and ignore the insults, the personal insults, that you're trying to make the point that you'd like everybody to be treated equally. At least that's one of your many points. Don't celebrate one way for somebody and another way. As I have said a couple of times, the flags that were required for Pride, I'm in favor of continuing to use them as long as they exist, and that means they may wear out over time. What we've done for other celebrations is put something on, make out an announcement and change the clock tower colors to reflect those celebrations. You may not think that's adequate, but what I offer you is you have the opportunity, if you want to organize a celebration, and I'd certainly support it for Jewish Heritage Month, please do so. There are people, as you're going to find out, because I'm going to quote from some of these letters that came in, that have worked hard to create other celebrations on their own account. And there is very little village money that goes into those other celebrations. So I give you, you're welcome to try to create the celebration that suits your purposes. I understand you. Well, I'll leave it at that. Now, let me just mention a few things because some of them go to facts, things that you described as facts in your letter. And I guess I'll mention who they're from. This is from Kelly Bradfield. As a parent of an LGBTQ child and knowing LGBTQ families and children in the town of Irvington, my husband and I, who are a combo of Jewish and Christian faiths, are deeply saddened by Lori Regan's letter. Lori's anger is palpable, and we understand some of it. Lori's writes that Jewish people have been oppressed and murdered since ancient times, and anti-Semitism is rapidly on the rise in our country, with several shocking and horrible murders and injuries reported in the news in the past several weeks. But it doesn't do us any good to voice our frustrations and anger by stomping on the rights and pride of other vulnerable groups that we don't know much about. Trivializing the celebration of the end of enslavement or LGBTQ pride or trying to erase our history is counterproductive and deeply horrible and sad. Here's what I'd like Lori to try and understand, because I'm trying to understand her perspective and needs. Our LGBTQ kids, many of whom are experiencing the intersectionality of being Jewish and being LGBTQ, or being Black and Jewish and LGBTQ, need to know that we are proud of them. There are currently 588 anti-LGBTQ bills in the legislative process. While not all of those bills will become law, do you not believe our kids feel or sense this hate? Would a Jewish child in California not hear about the anti-Semitic murders that just occurred in Washington, D.C.? Did you know that LGBTQ youths are at a statistically significant risk of suicide compared to other kids? In the words of Republican Governor Spencer Cox of Utah, I don't understand what they are going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. All the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly. I'm just going to try to skip through some of this. My family is grateful to live in the supportive community of Irvington. Our hope is we can all feel valued and listened to, and that we have the strength to respond to hate crimes and hate in general by being inclusive and finding our humanity. In the words of Sarah Milgram's rabbi, the message we are giving is, what would Sarah want us to do? What would she whisper on our ears now? She would say, more light, more love. Don't fight darkness with more darkness. Fight darkness with light and positivity. That's the message we are giving. The second letter is from Melissa Hood. Melissa Hood, excuse me. On Friday, I was driving down Main Street when my 3-year-old suddenly got excited and yelled, "Look, Mama, rainbow flags." Brought a smile to my face, knowing that he will grow up in a town that is welcoming to all people. In fact, it's one of the many reasons we moved here. Speaking for myself and my family, we fully support the town's Pride flags and Juneteenth celebration and all that the town is doing to make Irvington more inclusive. Regarding Lori B. Regan's letter, she writes about the execution of Yaron Shinsky and Sarah Milgram simply because they were Jews. That was a horrible, senseless act, and I can recognize Lori's frustration with the growing rise of anti-Semitism and the village's minimal response to Jewish American Heritage Month. My family and I fully support the town's efforts to protect our Jewish community. What I do not support is pitting marginalized groups against each other, which is a lesson we can learn from Sarah Milgram herself. Sheila Katz, CEO of National Council on Jewish Women, spoke about Sarah, saying, "I saw firsthand what a passionate person she was and admired her work on civil society and advocating for women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and for peace between Israelis and Palestinians. She stood up for other marginalized groups and was a light to us all. We should all be that light, standing up for marginalized groups, making our community safe, embracing diversity, and being more inclusive. I see the village doing its best. There's always room for improvement, but as the saying goes, it takes a village, and each of us has a responsibility to make the world better. Please keep the pride flags and let's explore ways all members of our community feel included." And lastly, this is from Angie Sullivan. She is the co-chair of the Juneteenth Committee, commemorating, looks like Secretary of the Board. It's been a pleasure to watch the transformation of the village over the past few years. Our main street has come alive with public art that honors the village's true history, holiday decorations that include more religions, community sculptures that represent our talented local artists, Bulldog Gallery, patriotic flags that allow families to honor military heroes, pride flags that show support for our small but growing population of LGBTQ residents. There have been so many changes that have made our village feel more joyful, welcoming, and inclusive. Thank you. One resident has written a letter on the public record sharing her displeasure with the Juneteenth statue, the Juneteenth celebration, Matheson Park being open, and the pride flags, among many other things. Her viewpoints are uninformed and metaphorically a 3.5-page boot stepping on the necks of marginalized people. I hope you'll respond by informing her about the meaning of yesterday and the fact that it honors enslaved men, women, and children who are buried under Barney Park. It is not a Juneteenth statue. It was not paid for by the village. A small group of volunteers raised money to commission the statue. The meaning of the statue is directly tied to our local history. She's not writing letters about the maintenance of Rip Van Winkle. So what is it about honoring enslaved people who died in bondage just a couple blocks away from that statue that bothers her so much? I hope you'll respond by informing her about how Little Irvington has contributed financially to the annual Juneteenth celebration. The first few years were fully funded by donations and grants from non-village entities. Last year, the first year the village had a budget for Juneteenth of $800. It's a drop in the bucket in comparison to other village events. He's not writing letters about how much the village spends on the egg hunt, Halloween, the 4th of July. What is it about this particular federal holiday that bothers us so much? Yesterday in Juneteenth came to be in this village. Volunteers did research, brought awareness to the community, built a coalition, and rolled up their sleeves to raise money. We didn't step on anyone's neck to bring attention to our cause. We can all be celebrated. We can all be honored. We can all feel included. This town is on the right track. I would only add, because it wasn't mentioned in any of these, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, that the military tribute banners were paid for by individuals. They were not paid for by the village. So I certainly I understand your in your letter, your feelings of both frustration and anguish are palpable. I get it. But this is a little like you'll forgive me for using this analogy, being a parent and having to choose between your children. I am not going to choose one group or another group. That's not our role. Our role is to promote everybody and make everybody feel welcome. You have decided that for some reason we the board, don't feel, aren't willing to welcome those of Jewish heritage. My children went to Solomon Schechter. My wife is a Mohelet. Doesn't make any difference to you, but I'm about as Jewish as you can get. And nobody's given me grief over that status. I understand that's one example. But what you need to understand is I'm not in a position, and I don't think anybody on this board is in a position, of promoting any one group over another. I understand you may feel that the presence of those flags demonstrates that, but that's not what is intended. What is intended is that everybody gets treated in a way that's respectful. Everybody who wants to step forward and say, I want to do a particular celebration for my group, will figure out a way to do it. within reason, I have to admit that since when I was last mayor, the menorah appeared, and I had to do a little research, recognizing the possibility that you either open that space for nobody, or you open it for everybody, which runs the risk that certain I'll call undesirable groups could decide that they want to, thinking of the Nazi Party in particular, want to put something up there. And we'd have to deal with that at that time. I decided it was better to be inclusive and allow people to celebrate. I get it, we could be way better. We could do more, and that's what we're trying to do. But to get a letter like this that says we're hiding behind our Judaism, we're so apathetic and vapid, and I mean, I could go on because you got quite a few here, is not persuasive. I don't know whether you have a legal or other background, but the way to persuade this board is not to insult us, because in any argument, you lose people's attention right away. So that's what I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything, but that's what I have to say about the piece of correspondence. And since we have no other correspondence, and public comment is next, if you wish to say something in response, you're welcome to do that.
I do. Is any other board member have anything to say before I do? So I have some prepared remarks. I will walk up to the mic, but just to quickly address a couple of the points.
Could you, I know I've been talking to you, but the camera, if there is anybody watching, just say your name and.
Oh, sorry, Laurie Regan.
Thank you.
So I never asked for the pride flags to be taken down as long as the other heritage months were recognized equally. The only reason why I suggested the pride flags there were two reasons. First is that you refused to put up flags during Jewish American Heritage Month. And that means that if you're not going to have flags for every Heritage Month, you shouldn't have them for any. I feel very strongly about that. The second reason, as I indicated in my last letter, I believe, and included numerous links to numerous articles, that the pride flag is hardly anything but inclusive. While you may feel very comfortable as a Jew whose children went to Schechter, God bless. I have friends who are lesbians who attempted to march in the Dyke Parade with their pride flags that had Jewish stars on them and were pushed out and told they couldn't. It is not inclusive of Jewish people. I can show you videos of Jewish people with their pride flags being yelled in their faces. Zionists not allowed here. Zionists can't march with us. Zionists aren't welcome in the pride movement. So it is not an inclusive organization. And I will turn to I think that's the most important thing, is that the excuse you gave for not having Israel flags, or if you didn't want Israeli flags, you just wanted flags with the Stars of David on them, that's fine, was a cost, I believe. And I added up the cost of the pride flags, which came in at around $380. It seems to me the town can afford $380 to get some flags for other heritage months that people request. Am I the only one that's requested flags? If that's the case, then treat me equally. And that's my main point about that. I'm going to just read my prepared remarks and then let you all move on with your meeting. Several years ago, when I served on Irvington's Police Review Committee, the Black facilitator who knew nothing about Irvington, but who the town paid a lot of money to spend 4 months accusing the nation's, and by extension, Irvington's police forces of inherent racism, opened the first meeting with the ridiculous claim that, quote, the next George Floyd could happen right here on Irvington streets. It would have been laughable had not all the committee members, minus the police officers who were serving, nodded their heads in agreement. Putting aside that there are no 300-pound Black criminal meth addicts hanging out on Main Street distributing counterfeit money, these people clearly had no understanding of our community to make and agree with such a ridiculous comment. But for 4 months, they functioned as if every Black person who came through our town faced life-threatening encounters with the police. Now fast forward to May 2025, when we just witnessed the third physical assault on a Jewish community by a Jew-hating illegal Muslim immigrant who, unlike George Floyd, actually could have found refuge in Irvington, given our sanctuary city policy and the fact that up until now he hadn't attempted to murder anybody. He used Molotov cocktails to attempt to murder Jews on the eve of the holy day of Shavuot, who were holding a vigil in support of the remaining Israeli hostages held captive in Hamas's terror tunnels. Some of the victims were Holocaust survivors who had survived the ovens of Auschwitz, only to be burned decades later on the streets of Boulder, Colorado, and airlifted to burn units at local hospitals. This was just weeks after two Israeli embassy members, one of whom I was with the day before, were assassinated in front of DC's Jewish Museum, and a month after Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's house was lit on fire on Passover with him and his family inside. And then there are the incidents that you don't hear about, like the Muslim man in Michigan who just pled guilty in a plot to open fire and kill Jewish preschoolers at a daycare center in a synagogue. This is way more common than you hear about. I have shared ad nauseum information with you all falling on deaf ears. Your singular obsessions with Juneteenth and Pride Month are emblematic of how immoral the left in this country has become. But to see it play out in the town in which I've lived for 35 years also shows how low this community has dropped from one of working class patriots to immoral ideologues who ignorantly try and equivocate LGBTQ struggles with those of the Jewish people worldwide who are now facing the next attempt at extermination because of globalizing the Intifada. It's hard to take seriously people who think that declining to bake a cake is worse than burning Jews alive or executing them in cold blood on our streets. The moral depravity of all of this would be shocking had it not become so commonplace here. I made a simple request several years ago: adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. In its infinite wisdom, the progressive ideologues running the policy here chose not to. I would say that I wonder how many Jews have to die on US streets before someone on this board wakes up that it might not be such a bad idea to take steps to recognize and support our Jewish community, not just in words, in deed. But in the face of my more recent request to recognize all heritage months, including Jewish American Heritage Month, you all once again turned a blind eye with lies about pride flags intending to be unifying, non-existent discrimination against gay people and the like, all of which is just BS compared to what it's like to be a Jew in America in 2025. It was also BS that it would be too expensive to purchase flags, as I pointed out. And from what I can tell from the information that I received from Katie, thank you very much, I believe you're spending about $5,000 on Juneteenth.
Correct.
Okay, well, then the receipts I got, we can walk through.
It's because some of those receipts, I think, were a lot of what's paid for by Juneteenth is grant money and other, I don't think it's all the village. I don't know what.
It was last year's, the Madam CJ Walker. It was the receipts from that, yeah.
For the street renaming, right? So it was.
There were other, so last year we spent $5,000 on this event.
Okay, it wasn't Juneteenth, there was a street naming that was supposed to happen and happened on the day, but it's fine. Go ahead.
It's what we choose to spend money on and what we choose to not spend money on. Jewish flags are not something that you all choose to spend money on. Jews don't warrant a budget line item in Irvington. There's not one aspect of Western society today that has not been infiltrated by Jew hatred, often under the guise of hating Israel and Zionists. And yet Irvington could care less about the Jewish residents who wish that they too be recognized equally along with the other demographics that the powers that be have selected for special recognition. Given the past 2 years of our streets blowing up with terrorist sympathizers assaulting Jews and FBI hate crime statistics that reflect the explosion of anti-Semitism not seen ever before in this country, and it would have been easy to just agree to hang flags with Stars of David on them. Yet even that was too much for you all. The pathetic statement that you did put out on Jewish American Heritage Month didn't even mention Israel. Schefter Parent didn't mention Israel, the homeland of our people that goes to the core of our identity. I shouldn't be surprised you didn't have the decency to mention the hostages or the American citizens murdered by Hamas, but to leave any mention of Israel out of your statement continues to make the case that your moral compasses are seriously broken. And now it has come to my attention, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because we can save the last couple of minutes of my remarks, that you've decided to paint our roadways in pride colors as well, because the flags simply aren't enough. Flags that symbolize a movement that is blatantly and proudly anti-Semitic, as I pointed out to you in my prior email with a multitude of examples of the LGBTQ community discriminating against Jews, prohibiting Jewish stars on flags, and refusing to let Zionists, i.e. Jews, march in their parades. And yet not one of you has acknowledged the discrimination against Jews. And instead, you're not only flying the anti-Semitic flags for the entire month, but you're now painting our streets as well. It's like you want to send a message that Jewish lives don't matter, whether in terror tunnels in Gaza, whether on the streets of our country where we're starting to be slaughtered, whether on college campuses, or whether in Irvington. You can shake your head at me, Mitchell, but
You
you know
are
what?
insane.
I'm not insane. I
You are
spend my life
insulting.
doing this.
You are absolutely insane.
I live in a very correct town of people that don't understand
Criticizing
anti-Semitism.
something that shouldn't be criticized. I promise you.
I'm
that
sorry,
there's nobody-
anti-Semitism shouldn't be politicized?
There's
Do you know why
nobody-
it's happening? Because it's been politicized on our college campuses, in our
You
K
have
through 12,
decided that.
in our
No,
media.
that's how you have decided
No,
that.
no, no. I
Anti-Semitism
didn't
has been a
decide it. It's
problem
a
for
fact.
tens of thousands
Of
of
course
years.
it has. And now it's time that you do something so that we don't see Holocaust #2 happening.
Because I disagree with you on how to approach it.
Because it
You
was Jews like
insult
you that
us,
allowed
and you say
Holocaust to
these
happen
horrible
in the
things.
first place. Because it's Jews like you that allowed the Holocaust to
Finish,
happen in the first place.
please.
Oh, yes, you're blaming me
Yes.
for the Holocaust.
Like you. I said like,
Like I
not you
said,
personally.
outrageous.
Lori,
I think we need to.
Nobody.
I'm
is
gonna
more
finish my
upset about
statement. I'm gonna
anti-Semitism than
leave
me.
and you all can clap when I do.
I think you're done.
Lori,
We're past.
normally people would get 3 minutes. I'm letting you
Okay.
go over, so finish.
I was responding to the several minutes of comments that you read into the record as well.
Okay,
I've asked you multiple times to do the right thing, apparently recognizing the dire predicament for American Jews, for Irvington's Jews isn't one of them. History never looks back on people like you all very kindly. You all should be ashamed. I just think that you lack the morality to understand it.
so let me give you a few things.
You don't agree with you, we're not normal.
Wait, just take,
Not normal. Who used the word normal?
No,
I'm
moral.
sorry.
Moral, yes, that's
I have to agree with you.
hold on.
Yeah.
Let me just suggest, since we've already asked this of you. First, you should understand that the painting that's going on of a crosswalk is being planned by individuals. It is not a village.
Have to give the green light for it. It's on village property.
I understand, but my point to you is, if you care
If I
that,
bring somebody
if
in,
you
I can
care
have
that-
Israeli flags.
why don't you we're taking turns
go ahead.
talking, so
Sorry.
why don't you
Oh,
show me
you're
that
right.
much respect?
You're right.
You have no problem insulting me, but you're not going to cut me off. If you care that much, plan an event or give us the content of the statement you'd like for next year. Okay? We may edit, but you don't like what we did. You're very good at criticizing. You're not so good at putting forth the content.
I
So
put the content, hang flags for each Heritage Month. It was simple. Adopt IRA, hang flags for each Heritage Month.
All right.
If you don't get that as the content, I don't know what you're
very
missing.
good. I got it. Thank you. Okay.
Very simple.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Good evening. I'm Peter Bernstein, North Cottonette Street. That's my first meeting of the year, so thank you guys for your service. Thank all of you for your service. I know this is really a volunteer effort. You've spent a lot of time trying to make the village a better place. Also, Larry, my first meeting since I heard you're calling it quits, so congratulations. And good luck to you guys finding somebody who does their job so conscientiously as Larry has for years. Just some statements, related statements, I would say. In recent weeks, I've been especially proud of Irvington for the successes we have had towards making the village a welcoming and safe place for all. I thank this board and recent boards for supporting that path in meaningful ways, despite the doom and gloom predictions of those opposing those decisions. Spring in Matheson Park, now that it's open to all, including dogs, is full of diverse families enjoying the refurbished playground, picnicking at tables or under the trees, or simply enjoying the river views, including my Jewish brethren during Passover and other events, other holidays. The predictions of drug-selling, violent gangs setting up operations at the park were nonsense. 8 years ago, the board adopted the Immigration Protection Act as a demonstration of our community values. Some of those opposed to the act predicted that our immigrant neighbors would be breaking into our homes to commit violent acts. More nonsense. The recent outpouring of support for one of our immigrant families who experienced a horrible family tragedy demonstrated that our community values more than words. And that was like the generous donations to the GoFundMe campaign put out to help our Muslim immigrant neighbors. In recent years, community members have gotten together to research and commemorate the history of the enslaved Africans who lived here in colonial times and to celebrate Juneteenth. The village has cooperated and supported these endeavors, but it's been community members raising the funds and organizing the related events. This month, seeing the banners honoring our veterans and the pride flags on Main Street remind me that 80 years ago, our veterans fought against fascism, an ideology that dehumanized Jews, gays, and others based on their identity. I'm proud to be a resident of a community that is committed to welcoming all. Thank you.
Good evening. My first meeting this year as well, whenever the year started. I'm Lisa again, this is really hard because I'm not normally shy in public, but I'm shaken and I'm shaking. That's hard by what we just heard. In bystander intervention trainings, we're taught to interrupt hatred. The number of groups that receive vitriolic, hateful remarks, they were all directed to you as well, the board, that entire groups of people who had to hear that characterization of George Floyd's murder cannot unhear it. So I can't interrupt it because it happened already. It happened to our LGBTQ community. It happened to Jews like Mitch purportedly, and also Jews like me. In that sense, what was said about the Holocaust, it's so harmful and it can't be undone. But what we can control is what we do moving forward. So what I actually came to say is thank you for the pride flags we have in Irvington. And part of the reason why I wanted to say thank you is because I think the first Irvington Pride that we created gave me the opportunity at the age of 40 to come out as bi. And I had never done that before in my life, even though people who knew me in my 20s knew I had a long-term relationship with a woman. But in my later life, I married a man. You know, this is the era that people know me in, so they have no idea. And like, I think a lot of women in particular, but also other folks become a kind of less visible, obvious part of the LGBTQ community that maybe belies how many people are actually impacted on a daily basis by the decision to include. And I think that's actually also part of why it's so important to come out, maybe repeatedly, for different folks to hear so that they know that we're not afraid and we can be proud. And so our young people know that despite the fact that they think we hatched out of an egg, like dull and irrelevant, like we made choices to be ourselves proudly all along the way. And we're continuing to make that choice, even in really scary times. So the last thing I want to say, in addition to the pride flag gratitude, is there's a phrase that stuck with me that was used actually by a Jewish Israeli professor who has advocated very forcefully, vociferously for Palestinian human rights. And it's very short. Life isn't fair, but you can be. And I think that's a lodestar for this moment for me. It's what I'll teach my kids. And I think you are all part of that. I'm really grateful for what you've done, and I am proud of us.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then I will move along to the less exciting consent agenda. I'm going to move to adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a second? All in favor? Okay. Approval of consultant agreement with Kelly Deer Management. This is effectively a renewal of the agreement that was in place last year because the agreement is the same. I have forgotten if the price has changed, but it's not. If it did, it's not by much. No, it did not change. I just wanted to change. Okay. And we will be doing effectively the same program we did before. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I just had the worst moment of my life, right? I want to apologize for my outburst. I believe every word that came out of my mouth, but I am ashamed of myself for saying it when I said it. So I want to apologize, not to the person. I want to apologize to my colleagues for speaking out in such an inappropriate way. Although I stand by every word.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying so.
it's understandable. Unfortunately, what happens to people on this board, people who send often is overstates, but people do send in some rather biting correspondence, and that's a diplomatic word that I'm using. And for the most part, we just sit here and take it. And yes, this is a volunteer position. And yes, we are doing this to try to make Irvington a better place. You may disagree with where we end up or what our views are, but when you personalize that, first off, you start to lose our attention because we're thinking about how you're insulting us. And that applies anywhere in the world. If you think it's a good argument, I mean, it's a little like those of you who are old enough to remember the old Chevy Chase, Jane Curtin routine on Saturday Night Live, where he leads, they're co-anchors in a news program, and he leads with an epithet to his co-host, and
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd?
Yeah, Chevy Chase.
All right, Dan Aykroyd, all right. Regardless, then I'm not old enough, that's good. But my point simply is, you want to make a good argument, make the argument. Don't insult the people in front of you. And that goes to anybody who's submitting the letter. That is my recommendation to you.
I just say one thing.
Yes.
I do want to say that just in listening to that doesn't mean that we agree. And clearly I disagree with almost everything that Lori had to say. There are lots of mischaracterizations about what happened with the police review committee. There's a lot of mischaracterization about what we say or how we feel about certain things. And just because we don't disagree with what she wants to do doesn't mean that we are anti-Semitic. So I think, I think this board needs to move on from that. I think the community is clear in where we stand and people are happy and prideful about the pride flags. I don't think we have to get an argument about all the misinformation about what that movement is or get into like who's worse off than whoever. There are really some terrible things that are happening, which we can acknowledge and move on from. But I do think that we have to move with intention in what we do, and we will continue to do that. And I think that we are speaking for a community that clearly the majority of this community is moving in sync, wants to be welcoming and wants to be inclusive. And I'm proud of this board and the boards that came for doing that. And we will continue to do that. We'll continue to support the community.
You reminded me of one more point that was in Lori's letter that she did not address, which was about the police department. She gave us multiple suggestions about how we were not sufficiently honoring the police department. What she's not aware of is that in the last meeting, commendations were given out to the police. We thanked them and noted that it was National Police Week. We lit the clock tower blue and made a public announcement. She insisted in a prior letter that we should have given a luncheon for the police department. I offered that to the chief, but as one would expect, that's a very difficult thing to arrange given the 24-hour scheduling of a police department that at this moment is, well, hopefully it's less understaffed after this moment than it was before the meeting occurred. But we have been acting without her prompting in that regard. Again, this is probably not satisfactory to her, but we don't ignore the service of the police department. Now, back to the subject at hand, which was the Kelly Deer Management contract. If there are no questions,
I
I
have
am.
something to say.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm going
Go
to-
ahead. I'm giving you more than 3 minutes too.
Well, I mean, I'm not a WWE fan, but I'm going from hero to heel
Yeah.
like that. So I vociferously oppose this. I just want to note that we're up to almost $100,000 that we're paying someone to come in and really inhumanely kill 250-pound animals with arrows. It's a disgrace. And it's also a lot of money with, I'm a social scientist, and I know that in order for data, when you look at data to see if something is working or you're trying to come to a conclusion, it has such a requirement that the researcher has to come to the data with an open mind saying, what does the data show me, rather than, oh, I want the data to show this. So I'm not, I still stand by what I said at the time, which is this is a lot of money to spend on something that really is not likely to work. And I just want to say that we just went through the budgeting process just a month ago, I guess it was, and we had to tell different department heads that were trying to make the bill better in some way that we didn't have money for them to do that. So we had to tell the building department that they couldn't have someone to help expedite applications so people would wait less long to have their applications processed. We told them we didn't have money to do that, so people don't have to wait longer because we couldn't give them the money they needed to make it go faster. The police chief made a number of recommendations that we couldn't fulfill because we had to meet our budget number. And I support meeting the budget number. I just want to make that clear. And I just think that it's like ridiculous to me that this money is going to kill deer in a violent way. And I also want to note that when the person whose contract we're ratifying testified, I asked several questions, and you might at the time wonder why I was asking, but it really revealed the mindset. I had asked about why 2 bucks were killed if we were told in testimony that the best strategy is to kill the females. And he said, well, the state lets us kill 2. And I'm like, how is that an answer? Right? If the idea is we're hiring him not to have fun and like a hunter who's allowed under New York state law to kill 2 bucks, the idea was how to accomplish this goal. And he treated it as if like, oh, well, I could kill 2, so I did. And when I asked him about if any deer were not killed instantly and ran off, his answer to me was, well, nobody saw anything. And I was like, I wasn't asking if anyone saw anything. That wasn't what I'm concerned about. I want to know if the deer are separated. There was no concern on his part that these were animals that had feelings. And it's just a really inhumane thing. And we have $48,000. Imagine what our rec department supervisor could do with that money, or our library director could do with that money, or what the theater managers, we gave that to a budget to the marketing director as to how to build an audience for the theater. There's just so many better ways to spend this money. And I know it's all the way down the road and people get so tunnel vision and you latch onto something, but I just don't see how on any planet this is a logical thing to do. And I'm not just going to sit here and just vote no and shut my mouth. I'm going to say
That's
what
okay.
I think. And that is, I think this is immoral and this is insane. And I just can't believe we're doing this. But that's my opinion. So,
Okay, I'm not gonna try to counter that, but I will make 2 points. One, my view of this after doing a lot of research was it may very well have significant flood control impact by allowing the forest to regrow. That is a very, very, very expensive proposition. A lot of what we're having to do now. The second point to be made is, and it goes to your point about, I'll call it science. And that is, we are going to measure the impact on the forest. I don't think you can get that after 1 year. And if after, look,
who's preparing that date?
we are using the original advisor whose name escapes me at the moment. Bagley,
That's in
Bagley.
favor of killing the deer, right?
No, that's to verify. No, I don't.
No, she was simply, she was simply educating the Woods Committee on how to assess plant regrowth, whether it's happening or not happening. Because if it's not happening and we don't see, let's say after 2 years or so, that there is some regrowth, and there has been some evidence that certain plants that didn't exist before are starting to come back. Again, I'm not attributing it to deer or no deer. You have to see real scientific evidence that this is working. I won't be the mayor at that point in time when this comes up again, but whoever is can make that assessment based on a scientific judgment. Are we achieving what we intended to achieve?
And as a social scientist, I just want to say I won't be on the board either. I really
Yeah.
hope that it is a scientific process, because data in the wrong hands is not scientific. You give me a data set and you tell me what you want the outcome to be, and I will give you that outcome.
I get it. That's why we're not measuring it by the number of deer. We're measuring it by, is the forest starting to regrow? At least that was my intention.
Right, but in my point, just to be clear, because I don't think that what you said didn't address what I was saying.
Well, that was intentional.
Whoever
That was
is
an account.
measuring it is what I'm saying. In other words, like the people doing the measurement, the human beings who are saying, I measured this and here's the data and this is what I think, have to be people who are doing science. In other words, who are going in, I'm going to tell you whatever the results really are, not someone who's directing to use the data to get an outcome that they want.
So, this is sort of a question. Am I correct that I think there were 8 sites or so that were plotted out? When we check them, are we taking photographs or are we just doing surveys? Surveys. All right. I might recommend that we at least take some photographs, because that way, if someone says you're, tweaking the data to satisfy your own desires, they can look at the photographs and go, well, you're right. There's that many of these plants now. There weren't that many of these plants back then. Yes, somebody could doctor a photograph.
But it's more
We're going to
than
go that far.
It's like-
No.
No, but I mean more, it's the amount statistically significant. It's going to actually give a kind of cover that's going to prevent the flooding that you're concerned about, things like that. That's what I'm talking about.
I get it. I get it. And at that time, it may be appropriate to bring back in somebody who, the original person we talked to, or if somebody decides there's another expert, tell us, okay, here's what we see. Is this statistically.
That's all I'm saying,
significant.
because if you
Yeah.
can, like, there's, I mean, I'm at one quick ridiculous
Yeah.
thing. You can find correlations within things that are outrageous, like, you know, the amount of margarine consumed in the state of Maine is a perfect correlation to the number of divorces. But there's no relationship that anyone
Right,
can
you're
really
talking
make.
correlative rather than causative.
Yes, exactly,
I-
you understand,
yeah.
right?
I do
I got
understand,
it.
yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Great.
Gonna have to quit margarine.
There's even funnier ones than that. That's just really funny.
I like the shadow bitch.
So anyway,
Margarine is a
I'm just,
vegan.
I guess that's what I'm most concerned about, because, yeah, anyway.
Okay. All right, so here is unless anybody. So no, okay. The motion I'm making is resolved to approve the consultant agreement with Kelly Deer Management in the amount of $48,450 for consulting services relative to the Deer Management project and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, against?
Nay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. I don't usually say that, but I want to miss that point. Okay. Next up is the renewal of the agreement with Capital Management, CMA. They are our agent for bond issuances, yes? And this is the same agreement.
Same
Uh,
agreement, no change to the
What-
pricing.
What do we
structure.
select? Because, oh, yeah, well, that is sort of my question. There's a comp section where you're supposed to check the box. So it's either contingent or on retainer.
We selected the retainer option,
And that was
$10,000.
$10,000. Okay, got it. Does anybody have any questions? Because we used it last year, maybe the year before. How many?
We've been using them quite some time. Under this agreement, this would be the second year. We did do a RFP last year, and through that process, we selected them.
With all the.
Well, yes,
With
with
multiple
several
other
villages.
villages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. If there are no questions, my motion is resolved to renew the agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC for financial advisory services, selecting the retainer option and authorizing the village treasurer to execute said agreement. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of change order number 3 with McLaren Engineering for the Madison Park Stage Consultant Agreement. I think this went up by 38,000 or.
Yeah, so let me explain.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of just an increase. So the way we handle this is that the original contract that we signed purposely only covered the initial design investigation process, all the way through the construction documents and all the way through the bidding process. And that's where that's all we signed up for, because there was a window of time, if you remember going back a couple of years, where we didn't necessarily have the money for this. We had put it on pause to apply for a state grant, which we ultimately did get. But we did not want to be in any way committed to doing anything further than just the bid process until we identified where the money was coming from. So, as you know, right now, we're just starting the construction. So this change order specifically covers the construction inspection services that are ongoing right now.
Okay.
That's all it is.
All right. Anybody else have questions? No. My motion is resolved to approve change order number 3 for contract 2022-17 from McLaren Engineering and Land Surveying PC for construction phase services, stage structure phase 4, and site civil engineering phase 5, relating to the Madison Park Stage project in the amount of $33,800, and authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next up is approval of grant agreement with the New York State Department of Trust. This one is the TOD grant. I'm asking probably ahead of the game here, but what's the next step after we? You don't know.
I don't know yet.
Because we're waiting for New York State to do something.
Yeah, I mean, this is the next step in terms of getting into contract with them.
Yeah.
Once we're in contract, I'm sure they'll walk us through what the next steps are in terms of us actually starting this project.
Okay,
We did have an initial meeting that goes back several months. I took some notes there, so I have some idea of what is up next. We're gonna need to procure a consultant. We don't need to procure a village attorney. We don't need to procure a grant administrator, but we do need to procure a consultant to actually do the study. So I'm sure that'll be the next set of tests.
Okay.
And can I have one quick
Yeah,
change?
yeah, sure.
So this resolution was drafted prior to the review of the village attorney. I knew that Mary Ann would get to it. I wasn't sure if it would be by tonight. So I did put in by subject to review by the village attorney, that you can cross that out.
Okay.
Because she already took care of it and had some good comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Sorry, I have a question. Am I, and again, you're probably gonna tell me it's too early, but at some point we will put together a village committee to give us input on how to apply this grant and, sort of what the area is that, okay. got it.
Yes, no, yeah. The answer to that is yes at some point. Whether it's before the procurement of the consultant or after, I'm not sure yet. So
Okay,
I'll look into the details.
no problem.
There may be some, they may have outlined some of that in the work plan. I'll look at it closer.
All right, my motion is resolved to approve a grant agreement with the New York State Department of State for the transit-oriented development zoning study in the amount of $213,300 and to authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Do I have a second? All in favor?
All right.
Okay. I can scroll the end of the grant agreement. I think there's nothing else.
There's nothing
Okay,
else.
Very good. So next up is reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Okay, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, no problem. I want to start off with a report about the Board of Education. Board had their election week and budget passed overwhelmingly. I just want to congratulate the new board, the new members, and superintendent on really a very successful campaign.
Camera likes you guys.
I'm a ventriloquist.
You're not on camera, but
I'm
they
on-
are. We got to tweak
Are you
this,
trying to
Larry.
say-
No, you're talking and it's me on.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, John was
Usually when I'm not
swearing in
talking,
the
it's
police
watching.
officers that were showing me in Orleans.
Well, at least they got your response. I'm sure it was positive. Anyway, please continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is very confusing. Continuing on. Just an update of the newcomer or welcoming committee. It's going to be starting soon. I think this week they're putting a meeting and they're going to try to gather a small core group of people to start like finding out what the thinking is for the group and what ideas for events and they'll come back to propose some ideas to us and try to expand out. And ideally, it'll be a very large and important committee.
Great.
And so let's see. In addition to that, based off of the original letter that Lori wrote to us, I had reached out to the rabbi at the JCC about like trying to like bring in some like Jewish American celebrations here, and so I have a meeting with him tomorrow. I believe.
That's great. Thank
So
you.
yeah, no problem. I mean, I think something that is like, open to like perspectives, like that's really welcoming to like the whole Jewish community of Irvington. I think it's something that is very appropriate. Ironically, I think that this sort of meeting may discourage people from wanting to participate in a thing that celebrates Jewish Americans, which is unfortunately ironic. But I would like to say that I would be very welcoming to any and all like backgrounds of Jewish folks who would like to celebrate like being Jewish American and living here and living there.
Yeah. And frankly, the same thing applies to any other group that's really interested in, having a celebration. Just speak up and we'll see what we can do.
And I don't know, John, we were both at the streamlining meeting. I don't know if you attended
It's all
talk about it
yours.
at all. I'm happy to, I'll say a few words if you have
Yeah,
anything else
yeah.
you wanted to add.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of highlight the sort of focus. The last meeting was around, it was supposed to be around 4 points, but we sort of focused a little bit more on 3. A lot of it was around looking at the code and thinking about the thresholds for site plans and also for looking at fees and looking at the code and how like fees are sort of presented to the public and really advocating for different ways to be very transparent about that. I think people are often sort of surprised by how the process works, and I think it was a very interesting. I think there's a lot of agreement on having ways to like promote that through every permit you put in, every place having all that information very clearly there. I have it someplace on the website where it's easy to find. Just as many places you can have it so that people aren't surprised. I think it's like a really low hanging fruit that would be like just good for us. And I think you'd have less complaints if they do. But I think the conversation like it went directions, but a lot of it was around that transparency and like how do you find the code, thinking about the thresholds and how like, what triggers having needing a site plan. I think it's one of the biggest conversations that I think is going to be very helpful for us as a village and solve some of their future issues, like conversations around who can be a member of like the ARB might be partly addressed by like having a threshold and a lot fewer things going through planning board and ARB. And so I think a lot of those are conversations that are going on. There's not taken sides yet. A lot of it's just like open discussion about what possibilities are, and I think it's a very frank conversation. And I think that we're very knowledgeable, the facilitators. So I appreciate that and having a pretty good attendance. I think we've worked really hard on a lot of folks there. So
To that point, forgive me for jumping ahead, but I would just want to add something on that. I think the next meeting's 7/7 at 7 p.m. Okay, 777, if people can remember that.
that's what I remember.
And it's
Nice
gonna,
branding.
and it's going to be by Zoom. So people who are not on the committee could probably participate. I think the more the merrier. And there's also a survey coming out in the not too distant future. Okay, so.
Do we know a date? Do we know when it's going?
Probably the next Tuesday.
That's great.
And that's to people who have had a building application in the last 2 years or so. Or-
January 1st, 2024.
Okay. So you know, and that's, I guess it's owners and contractors and architects will have the chance to give us input. And I think it's accumulated by an outside person. So have no fear. Not that you should have fear, but if you do have trepidation, you should fill it out honestly so that we can get some results that we can actually use. And the only other gloss I would put on what you said is, it seemed to me the theme in many cases was education. You were talking about the fees.
Didn't get to that though. That was actually one of the bullet points
Well,
I wanted to talk
I'd
about.
argue a lot of the comments about fees and things, that sort of making sure that people I mean, I'm just using a different word.
Yeah.
But there is a benefit to people understanding, because oftentimes there is a miscommunication either between experts and homeowners or between homeowners and experts and the village. And I don't think that's anybody's intention.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you solve that problem? So
I think the next session may address that because I think it was one of the points that was supposed to be like delved into.
got it.
Okay. So for the DPW, in addition to everything else they do for the village, sinkhole repair, tree removals, they put the military banners up, the pride flags went up. This board member, I think all board members are very happy about. For Irvington Fire Department, they had 19 calls in May and 129 year to date. They are participating in this Sunday's Bulldog Gallery Day. Arlene, do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, you can talk about it.
So this Sunday, Bulldog Gallery Day, from 1 to 4 p.m. So far, we have 77 and sunny as our weather report. We have music, our own Mitchell Bard and band.
Not by myself.
I know. I said and band.
Okay.
I would
It's
enjoy
a
that.
scam. It's the scam.
Solo. I was like for your solo group.
Mitchell and the
Long time to
scam.
wait.
Yeah.
Not Mitchell and the Scam. I'm just the drummer. There's two very
No,
good
I'm
singers.
saying
Yes.
you are in the band.
I am in the band. Yes, I'm one of 4 people in the band.
We're gonna say more cowbell.
Definitely.
Should I bring my cowbell?
Yes. So we have our businesses taking part, and we have Commemorate that has a table. We have, I think, probably Green Policy Task Force. Then we'll be unveiling 23 new bulldogs that will stay up through the summer. So inviting everyone to come out. Last year, if you experienced Bulldog Day, it was a really great reminder about how powerful public art can be and how it interconnects with supporting our business and our community.
Is that
Yeah, that's it.
great? Thank you. Mitch?
Okay, so Wednesday, 2 days from now, at 7 o'clock at Mercy College in the Rotunda is the New York State DOT meeting to get feedback from the public on the Route 9 project. This is the last public meeting that's planned. Now, we don't know what they're gonna do in the future and stuff, but in the current timeline, I was with Larry, make sure I have it right, because he's on the committee with me. But under the current timeline that they're proposing, this is gonna be the third go around for public comment, and it's the last time for. And again, I said this last meeting, I'm gonna say it again, just so that everyone understands. I promise you, there are a lot of people out there who are not gonna like what's being done in this plan, and I'm not speaking against the plan. What I'm saying is, across the spectrum of what people want to see on Route 9, there's gonna be elements that are gonna make everybody upset. All right, so fill in the blank. If you think I want more X, you're gonna think there are ways in which that's failing. If you're exactly against that, and you want to see less X, you're still gonna think that the plan is failing, right? And I think it's really, really important that people get out there and see what it is, so that when the state announces it and says, this is our plan, people aren't like, well, I didn't have a chance to weigh in. It's like, no, this is your third chance actually to weigh in, third round, there were 2 each time, so it's your 5th chance to weigh in. And I think it's important that people go see the presentation and see what you like and don't like, so you can speak up and let the state know, because that's the only way they're gonna know, right?
Yep.
Did you want to say something that you wanted to?
No. You can.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. So that's really, really important. So it's Wednesday, June 4th. I almost said July 4th. June 4th at 7 o'clock at Mercy College in the big rotunda. And when I went last time there, it's easy to find because there's like signs and stuff like that. They don't try and hide it. They guide you with breadcrumbs to the meeting. Obviously, less importantly, but also important, I just want to note that the commission has been doing a lot of events that they're producing to kind of show the kinds of things that could be at the theater and not rely just on people coming in and bringing it. And they're doing something really cool on Friday, June 13th, so a week from this Friday. There's going to be a screening of the movie Gonzo Girl, which was directed by Patricia Arquette, and she's going to be there to introduce the film and to take questions out there. Also, the lead actress is going to be there, and the producer is going to be there. So it's a really cool event. It's like the kind of thing that you would normally see like in Manhattan or whatever, but you can see it right here in our village and our beautiful.
Yeah, it's supposed to be great.
I'm sorry.
The film is supposed to be great, I heard.
Yeah, I mean that's that. Yeah, and so it's really it's based on a true story about a woman who was the assistant to Hunter S. Thompson towards the end of his life. So it's a great idea. It's very cinematic. Willem Dafoe plays the Hunter S. Thompson stand-in. Alrighty, and I just want to note with the library, and I'm afraid to say it after today, but they have a lot of events this month for Pride Month and for Juneteenth. So please check out what they're doing to celebrate these.
Great. I just want to throw one thing in. Is tomorrow night I think you put out an announcement. It's the Con Ed. There's a hearing by the Westchester County.
Yeah, the Board of Legislators is hosting a community input session, I think they called it.
Not the Con Ed rates.
Relating to the Con Ed rate increase proposed, and that's being held up in the theater from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, so anybody who is concerned about the future of Con Ed rates, it might not be a bad idea to attend and listen to what's being said.
Well,
And contribute.
Speak your
Sorry,
mind.
yeah, speak your mind.
That's what they're looking for.
That would be a good idea. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so I was away for a couple of days, so I didn't have a chance to gather people. So I don't know, anything from the Woods Committee you wanna?
We're making progress on revising on sign ideas and working with the mountain biking community on those signs.
You may have to repeat that because
Yeah.
she's off mic.
So the Woods Committee is making progress with the mountain bike community to work on the trails in the woods. So we're working together well on that, and then
Signage.
the signage, yes. So that's a good effort between RAC and Woods Committee to sort of make our signage more welcoming and informative and non-confusing. Okay, and then I do want to highlight 2 events for Juneteenth. The first one is a co-sponsored event with the library, and it's a film. It's The Hidden Cost of Progress, Urban Renewal in Austin. That's Thursday, June 5th, from 6 to 7:30 in the Irvington Library. And then on June 18th, there's a concert at 7 p.m. at the theater. So it's an event with the theater. And it's the title is Joy is Resistance. And there's going to be a drum line and drumming. There are going to be 6th graders who are going to sing Lift Every Voice. And then the main act is the Resistance Revival Chorus, which is a very uplifting chorus of about 70 women and non-binary performers from the city. We don't know how many we're getting, but it'll be lots of fun and very uplifting evenings and tickets are for sale on the theater website, but the good thing is we have two events, one postmarked with the library and one with the theater.
Is that it?
No, I want to say one more thing. I do want to encourage people to understand how these events come to be, just like having been involved with Juneteenth and also with the Bulldog Gallery. It's really a group of volunteers that sort of spearheaded and do the work. And I think, the village would be open to that, but a little more positivity and a little bit more action instead of criticism will go a long way.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. At every level of government, I don't think you want the government deciding what celebrations should be held other than declaring a national holiday, for example. And even that is generated by citizens asking for something. So thank you for adding that. Village Administrator's report.
Just a quick reminder that at the next work session, there'll be a presentation regarding the Downingwood culvert. And our engineers, HVEA, will be here to make that presentation. We've notified actually the adjacent property owners, which are clearly the most affected, to attend that meeting if they're interested. And otherwise, there'll be lots of information.
We can do a site visit to Harriman Road to see what it looks like when you start putting the culvert in. Is it of that size?
It's not as long.
Not
no.
okay.
No, but it's still a crossing of Broadway.
Yep. Got it. Okay.
The price tag alone should tell you how much you need.
Okay. Village Clerk Treasurer's report.
So it's tax collection time again.
Yes, I got it.
Bills went out last
Yes,
week. Taxes are due by end of day, June 30th, without penalty. Payment can be made online, by mail, or in person.
That's it?
Yeah, that's
Thank
it.
you. Village Attorney.
I was just going to mention, I don't usually report on planning board items, but Mercy has a proposal for a field house. And just this afternoon, they posted the balloon. If you're wondering what the balloons are over there, they posted balloons that show where the edges and the height of the field house are proposed. Their initial
And it's
proposal.
all
And
on
it-
the Irvington side, or is it?
It's
shared?
all in Irvington,
Okay.
yeah. And it's like a between the entrance to the campus and Verizon Hall. Oh, it's exactly on the tennis courts now. But if you're interested, the balloons are up and they'll only be up until I think Wednesday at 5.
I've seen the designs. I met with the director for Mercy when I was talking about the
Yeah.
pool, and he was showing me the designs. They're really like good, lovely. It's a nice time.
There hasn't been, I mean, they're up where the field house is proposed, but there is some the consideration of alternative locations.
I know they would have been very interested in it making it a community space. They really wanted to invite members of our business community to be able to use the space.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Public comment, anybody? Oh, everybody, wow, almost everybody, sorry.
Everybody left.
Everybody's not married to somebody on the board.
That's right.
Artist fighting.
I really just
Gotta
initiate.
tell who you are,
Oh,
sorry.
Zoe Hamilton Von Bauer, Chair of the Woods Committee. I really, my intention coming tonight was just to say thank you for renewing the contract, which I really appreciate your opinion. We absolutely intend to provide data, not asking you to take our word for it. We believe that there will be a change to the woods. We are already walking in the woods this spring and observing changes that we believe are a result of a smaller population. I believe that Mr. Kelly's response about the $2 was maybe not the most ideal response, because I spoke to him all the time, and as a private hunter with a license, he had 2 buck tags, and because we are trying to reduce the number of mouths in the woods, his choice was to use his personal buck tags in our woods to remove 2 additional mouths. And I just wanted to clarify that point. I'm very excited about the 2 grants that the village has just received that will go towards work in the woods. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting. And my understanding is that part of that is thanks to the fact that we are being proactive about the deer population. It is still a hard decision, but I've managed to speak with Mr. Kelly every day he was in the woods, and based on evidence that he provided me, I believe that the animals suffered as little as possible. And I say that with all sincerity. You don't know me. I'm being as honest with you as I can be.
I don't
And that's
trust
fine.
him. So that's not you. It's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust him. So
Well, that's a shame. Anyway, I think that there's a lot of wonderful work going on, and if anybody's interested in birds or just critters and nature, right now in the Hermit's Wetland, there's a wonderful plant blooming called featherfoil,
yes.
and it's an endangered species that, thanks to the work of Warwick Norton removing an invasive species of Phragmites, has had the chance to flourish. It's been blooming. It is a beautiful plant. There is a muskrat making a nest in the wetland, and there are lots of wonderful birds, ducks, geese, and warblers. It's a really wonderful time of year to be in there. So I highly recommend it to anybody who's looking for some peace and quiet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work.
Hello, David Twibell. I have a number of little comments. One thing, that featherfoil is magnificent. If you appreciate nature at all, it's feeling like Walden Pond up there, or something out of a Lily's Renaissance painting. Just walking out there is magnificent, and a lot is thanks to Warwick Norton, who has been out there in the mud getting rid of the invasives in the mud of the pond. And all of a sudden there's this beautiful foliage coming out. Don't miss it. It's magnificent. The issue of the Route 9 and the issue of the electric rate. Both of those things seem very significant. And I mean, I went to the last Route 9 one in Mercy, and like, oh my God, if this goes through, this will like completely change everything that you know about driving into this town. I mean, it is a big deal.
And every other town on it.
And every other town between Yonkers and Tarrytown. In any case, and Con Ed is talking about 13%, a number that seem to be throwing around. I sort of feel like, I mean, I'm going and I'm looking at it, my eyes are just wide open, that I don't want to be a Lori Reagan, of one voice in the wilderness saying something outrageous or not. Do we have any sort of professional other opinion?
Yes.
Spot that we're landing on?
Yes.
In relationship to Route 9? That we,
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Con Ed, but
well, I know you are sort of with Con Ed.
That's Mitch. I'm ready for Con Ed.
when I said that people have different views on this,
I know.
I will give you one example. You came up here and said the way you drive will never be the same, but there are a lot of people who
want that.
They want that, and they're coming at it from a different point of view. They're saying the way you walk will never be the same, or the way you bike will never be the same, right? And then even within that, there are people who look at that and say there's not enough for the bikes.
Exactly.
And then some people saying there's too much for the bikes, right? So it's like it is very hard. That's why everyone has to go, because how else will we know?
What I'm looking for is there a consensus that as a group, some of us could support to, get a reasonable, it's not stepping on anybody's foot.
I think that and feel free to jump in.
I was
I was
just
going
gonna
to say, go, you go first.
No,
I'll go after. No, you go
You're an
first.
elected official.
I understand that, but I've already said a lot about Route 9. It's time for you to say something, and then I'll say afterwards if I don't.
Here's what I'll say. Whether you like what the plans show is going to be very individualized, as Trustee Bard suggested. But what I can assure you is that the way we got there as a group was, I think, very inclusive. It was a pretty healthy process. Was it perfect? It's not perfect. You have 5 different communities that are trying to come up with a standardized approach, the one size fits all. They didn't end up with one size fits all. They took a lot of community input. They took a lot of committee input, and the product was something that at least I feel, and Mitch was also on the committee, I feel that it reflects what it should reflect for Irvington. In other words, we got there in a good way. Is it perfect for every bike rider? Of course not. Is it perfect for every pedestrian? Of course not. For every driver? All of the various users of the corridor, it's not going to be perfect. And I think that was Mitchell's point. But we got there in a really healthy way, I thought. It was very productive for that many people, that many communities. So at least you can be assured of that.
I was going to add that, and I agree with everything Larry said, by the way. The only slightly different thing I was going to add to that is there were certain things that we knew as people who live here and whatever is better than living here is what Larry's knowledge is, that there are certain flashpoints that they couldn't possibly know. In other words, the way they originally had the length of the left-hand turn into Heritage Hill Road going south on Broadway would have been catastrophic. And we caught that, and and other little things like, some of the people on the committee were advocating for protected bike lanes, but we knew that like there would be a DPW nightmare as far as snow removal and all these other things that would have an actual impact on our budget and on the ability of our DPW to handle. And we stepped in and said, we can't be in favor of that, because that goes beyond whether you think there should be more bike lanes or whatever. This now is affecting, it's intruding onto actual budgetary problems that we would have here and manpower problems, things like that. So we were, I feel confident, I think you do as well, that we were very vigilant on like the things that would have been really, really bad for the village. What's left is more of that battle that I was talking about. So when you say to get behind something, I think we've already, this sounds too self-aggrandizing, I don't mean it that way. I think we already did the work of making sure that the potential catastrophic stuff is out, and now it really is a preference. How do you view the corridor? Some people view it as, if you look at the mission statement, right, it gives something for everybody. And one of the words they keep saying is multimodal for all, right? So anytime something's not as good for cars, not as good for bikes or for walking, they say, look, it's supposed to be good for everyone. It's supposed to be good for biking and walking and cars. But the flip side is, of course, what you were saying, your reaction was, oh my God, we have the assurances from the engineer that the average time through the corridor should be the same with the new design. I'm just telling you what the engineer said. So there's the answer to your question is no. There's not one thing that we can get behind, because the things that were really dangerous, I feel like we took care of. And now it really is what you think, what your vision of what Broadway should be. And I can't tell you what your vision should be. And I can't tell the other people who disagree with you what the vision should be. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like I feel like I would have an opportunity to have an opinion on that, because I'm trying to
represent everybody, and there are so many people on both sides of every aspect.
Exactly right.
At the end of the day,
Including the 3 of you who were.
Yeah, the 3 of us on the committee in Irvington to know.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's not a village road, but it's very interconnected in the village, obviously. They were super responsive, I felt, to our
Agreed.
concerns.
No pushback on the real serious things we brought up.
Yeah, we're not, look, if we came in here and said, yeah, those meetings were just rubber stamped and they just went and did what they wanted. That is not the case. 180-degree opposite. They were very responsive. Did they make all 3 members of the committee happy all the time? No, of course not. We even had disagreement among the committee. But that's the process. It's a good process.
And by the way, if you ask the representatives from the other villages, they had different priorities at some times, right? So it's like to forget having Irvington agree, we were supposed to have 5 villages. And that was, even trying to get us to agree. At one point, there was a memo they wanted to send. If you had seen the emails on that, it's getting the 5 people to agree to 2 items, and it never happened, right? We never got to a final, so.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter if you had a super highway running through Irvington, if the communities at either end, had what they have now. It's not going to get any better. So it's got to be consistent.
Yeah, so I know you want me to say like, yes, everyone should rally behind it. I can't say that, because I can't tell you what you should prioritize.
But at some point, the village is going to make a supportive or unsupportive statement to the,
Yes, I think that'll
to the
happen.
state.
Yeah.
I think
And
that-
the other villages will too,
Right.
and hopefully they're not contradictory enough that the whole project gets defeated.
I don't think that's really an issue because the state doesn't technically need our approval, right? We could say this is terrible and they can go, okay, and we just do it anyway. It's a state road,
Or they
right?
have to go out and get the money.
Well, look, I mean, the money hasn't been allocated yet. And the reality is if you have one community that's completely railing against it in solidarity, one community, that community probably will never get scheduled for any funding. It'll probably never get done there. So the answer is if you're looking at this plan and you'd rather keep everything exactly the same the way it is, or you'd rather at least give something a try to see if it can work, then you know what to vote for. So I think this community down the road, when and if the state is going to ask each of the communities, are you supportive of this plan? I think this board will have to think about it. There's going to be all new members, but or many new members, I should say. But at that time, they'll probably come up with an answer, which is, you know, we think Broadway's got some problems right now. I think we need to consider it.
There's some really good things, I think.
I was there last time, and yeah, it's a big
No, I
deal.
think it's-
It sounds good.
I mean, if you've ever had the mergers and then unmerge and merge and unmerge, I mean, that would be gone, right? So, and that would be a huge saver.
And to your Con Ed question, not only are we hosting this hearing from the county, but we are part of a group of Westchester communities. We've contributed dollars to an attorney who represents us and 40
communities.
40 communities.
Is that
Okay.
point of view going to be represented at this meeting? Or not?
I don't know because this is the county. The point of view that the truth is that it is it's a consumer issue. The village leaned in because we don't want our villagers, getting an outrageous rate increase. So we hired a professional who does this on a regular basis, who could do the analysis and point out the factors that matter as to why Con Ed shouldn't get the rate that they are requesting. In fact, think of him as an attorney, but think of him like a lobbyist. And for a very relatively small investment, once 40 communities were in, it's a couple of $1,000s.
$100,000 split 40 ways.
Yeah.
And
So
they've all signed up now.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, good.
So I mean, there's one community maybe that didn't, but that's because they either didn't use Con Ed or there was some odd, or they had so few Con Ed users that didn't make sense. But it's a good portion of Westchester. So we are doing our best and we get monthly updates. And if there's something dramatic that happens, I'm sure maybe I'll put it out in a mayor's letter or something of that sort so people will be aware of it.
Moving on. It won't take a lot of time, but just a couple other quick little things. Deb Flock and I, and Jan Lair, attended a 3 full-day conference at PACE on flood risk in the Hudson Valley, flood resiliency programs in the Hudson Valley. There was a lot of talk about how to get funding for different projects, and what the state is studying and what those projects are. And we got a lot of very positive information there. I will also say directly to Mitch that in that 3-day program, there was a whole morning session on deer management. And the takeaway that was presented to all the communities that were attending this was that climate change, in terms of flood resiliency in the Hudson Valley, meaning how much is going to flood, climate change is completely secondary by a large margin to deer management. The single biggest problem with flood resiliency in the Hudson Valley is the depletion of the understory by the deer population. And they are spending, or they have already spent a huge amount of money doing scientific research on that. for the entire Hudson Valley. And they will be coming out on a broader scale, publishing that information. And bending on every community's to implement their management programs, or else build flood walls higher than you've got now, because it's coming. That was takeaway from that session. And I'll be happy to share that with anyone who's interested in that. Thirdly and lastly, the Housing Committee is very happy to hear that the grant is now here, and we are approving that. One quick question, the work plan. Who wrote that? Did you write that, Larry, or did that come from?
No, I mean, our grant writer wrote it, but it was responsive to what the state guidelines were.
Right, okay.
But it's our plan.
Okay, great. I was just noticing in the plan that before hiring the consultant, it's the previous step to that is creating the zoning advisory. And there's a whole list of who should be on this zoning advisory committee in this work plan. And then that committee will work on selecting the consultant. I don't know what, we have no idea of how quickly this is going to come through. Although I did notice a date on here, it's starting in August or something, some timeline is starting in August. But whether that has any reality or not is up in the air. Nonetheless, I would say that maybe we should be thinking about who this zoning advisory committee is going to be that's going to do that sooner than later. And partially the reason I'm saying that is presumably sooner we're selecting another consultant to work on the facilities planning. And these guys may have some interrelationship. So thinking about that in advance of actually signing our contract with the first consultant might be helpful to see whether there's any relationships or anything like that that need to be looked at.
So I assume you guys will send an email to Larry and the board about this so we can act on it, or?
Well, it's here in your 40 pages of document on this.
Yeah, I mean, our impression is the state's a little cryptic in terms of what's next, and.
No, honestly, this contract was, we didn't get it very long ago, but it's rushed to get to the board meeting because I didn't want to wait for another board meeting, so.
Right.
But, with this contract getting put in place, we're gonna start working on it like we should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, then I'm gonna make a motion to go to executive session. All in favor?
Aye.